Hello and greetings, Fayetteville First United Methodist Church friends and family. I just want to let you know that I have been so inspired by all of the many things that you have done between making masks and making flowers and delivering things and the calls that you are making and the mail that you are sending and so much more. I know it's just unlimited, the amount of things that you are doing. And I just want to say thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for all that you do, for sharing your love for one another and for God. And in that, I've also found that another way that I have found comfort is by going back to some of the old stories that I remember from my childhood and have studied over the years. And one of those stories is the story of Jacob. And if you don't remember the story of Jacob, you can find him in Genesis chapter 25 and on through about 5 more chapters or so. But in that story, Jacob has quite the reputation for being a bit of a trickster, a manipulator. He goes through and manages to steal his birthright and his father's blessing from his older brother, and has to flee his home. And when he does that, he then finds himself in the wilderness alone. And on one of these nights in particular, he falls asleep and he has this dream that so many people have heard about. This dream where he sees this ladder that is reaching into the heavens. And at the top of the ladder, he finds God, and climbing up and down the ladder, he sees these angels. And God says something to him, and God renews his covenant that he has made with Jacob and his ancestors. But he also says to Jacob these words here, and I want to read this. It says, know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. And through that, Jacob says to God, wow, what an awesome place is this. He says, this is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And so it says that Jacob rose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had used as underneath his head, and he set it up for a pillar, and he poured oil on top of it. One of the things that I think is so amazing about this story is Jacob, who had typically been in control of his life, although it was through manipulation and trickery. Jacob found himself suddenly in a place that he was unfamiliar. And in that place, he is reminded by God that God is with him always, and particularly there in that place. And the two things that Jacob does immediately, the first is he names it. He says, you know what? This is the house of the Lord. And the second thing that he does is he sets up an altar of sorts. He does an act of worship by pouring oil on the rock, on the pillar. And I was thinking of that, and I was thinking of all that we're going through too. And while it's different, we're still sort of sheltering in place. And while our church doors are closed, we find ourselves in sort of an unfamiliar place. And we wonder, where is God? And I think that we can take from that story, Jacob's story, we can say, God is saying to us, I'm right here. I'm right here with you. And while the church doors might be closed for now, they will open again. I am with you, and you can worship me right now in your place, in your space, where you are. And so I want us to think on those things. And I invite you to take this time to be intentional about asking God to show you God's presence, and asking for God's grace and God's mercy, and going back and rereading the stories that are so familiar and comforting, and reading the stories of Jesus and knowing more about what is going on in those stories and those scriptures, and being comforted by those things. Continue to call on one another. Continue to send messages of cheer and goodwill, and let us intentionally seek out our faith, and to intentionally lean into the convictions that we have that God is always with us. So now may you go from this place, from this Facebook spot, this live feed, may you go with the knowledge and the hope that is in God. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and all peace. Stay safe.